Why don't we get started a little bit early tonight? We have a guest tonight that wants to say a few words to us. So why don't we start with President Frank, and then we'll go through introductions and welcome then. President Frank, go ahead.
So I know as you're wrapping up your activities, I just basically wanted to take a little bit of time and come in and say thank you, because although I obviously haven't seen your work product yet, you haven't finished it. I've had a chance to chat informally with a couple of you, and I've stayed in touch with Roger and with Bob. I know that whatever you provide is going to be useful to us. It'll be useful to us in terms of thinking through how to address issues if we raise the funds that we've talked about raising and are able to go forward. I think it'll be useful to us if we don't raise those funds. If we're not successful at that, and I think everyone here knows that I have my report to the Board of Governors at the October board meeting. We will have some challenging issues in front of us at that point in time as we sort through the options between reinvesting in maintaining Hughes Stadium, if there are options to more fully invest in Hughes for, say, the next 30 to 50 years. Do we have options around what we've talked about on campus? All of those, I think, will be things that if we are not able to say, yes, we're going forward under the plan that I recommended to the board and the board authorized, we'll have to sort through those. And as we sort through those, all of the things that you've raised around design, whether those are IGAs with the city, whether they're MOUs with the neighborhood associations that we come back and address annually, whether there are issues about noise, any of those sorts of topics are going to be things that will be useful to us as we move forward and try and find a way that, as I think many of you have heard me say before, addresses what I see as the three questions that we all have to answer, not just any one of them. What is the best in the long-term interests of the university? What has the least impact on our general fund, and what makes the most sense for our relationships with the community and the citizens in the city of Fort Collins. So I'm appreciative of what you're working on, and I think if I understand the timeline right, I will see that in the next week to two, and I just wanted to, since I had a moment on a night when I knew you were meeting, to stop by and say thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? I don't think there are any, probably.
No, we haven't had any questions.
We didn't do that. Well, thank you for your time.
Thanks for
Thank you.
the support.
Thanks for coming back.
Thank you.
Why don't we proceed like we usually do with introductions? We'll go around the table in the back with everybody that's here. I'll start on Bob McCluskey, the chairman of the committee.
Roger Sherman with CRL Associates.
Terry Pecora, representing the Classified Personnel Council at CSU.
I'm Ann Hunt, and I represent the Wallenberg neighborhood.
Alan Lamborn, representing the Shealy neighborhood.
Carl Wansvik, representing Campus West.
I'm Ross Kniff. I'm the Fort Collins City Council alternate.
Karen Wykenot, representing the city of Fort Collins. I'm the mayor.
David May, I'm with the Chamber of Commerce.
Mike Trombley, Fort Collins Police.
Doug Brobst, representing Save Our Stadium Hughes.
Nancy Hunter, I'm taking the place of J.T. Hughes, who was the CSU Faculty Council rep.
Ben Morgan, Ram Club.
Jeremy Seibert, Eastside Neighborhoods.
Emily Allen, Community Liaison between the city and the university.
Lisa Clay, season ticket holder.
Katie Braden, Administrative Professional Counsel, Colorado State University.
Mike Harms, Icon Venue Group.
Tyler Shannon, Be Bold in Sports Stadium.
Curtis Rowe, Kimley Horn.
Algin Williams, Populous.
Anita Wright, alum, a retired CSU budget officer, and ex-flag team member, from 3 years at Hughes.
Tom Linnell, Save Our Stadium Hughes.
Bob Vangemer, Save Our Stadium Hughes.
Mark Jackson, City of Fort Collins Transportation.
Diane Jones, City of Fort Collins City Manager's Office.
Martina Wilkinson, City of Fort Collins Traffic Operations.
Fred Hobbrick, CSU Facilities.
Well, again, welcome everybody for coming tonight. Roger, do we have a review of the August meeting?
Sure. Anyone have any changes to the meeting record and meeting notes for our last meeting?
You always do great notes.
Thank you. Okay. So before, a couple quick reminders. Make sure you speak into the mic when we speak so that you can hear yourself out of the loudspeaker. Also today I posted on the website the final traffic and parking study that we'll be talking about. It's 400 and some pages long, so it wouldn't email. If anyone wants me to print a copy and mail it to you, I'm happy to do that, but hopefully we're being green as much as we can, so I didn't bring copies of that for everyone today.
Okay, why don't we move on to updates on the design development and follow up by Populous and Elgin?
Okay, so my part's going to be pretty short and sweet this go around. The first couple of slides here, again, just to wrap up one of the conclusions from the last meeting was the environmental noise analysis. And I know everybody can't read this. This is the final report that was included in the design development package that was issued. And again, I've highlighted here just where the City of Fort Collins noise ordinance, the noise ordinance limits have been identified and documented in the study. And again, I think that was the only action item for us moving forward. So again, here's the rest of the document. It's about 6 pages, and all of this will be issued in the as part of the final report. So again, the noise ordinance, City of Fort Collins has been addressed. And from here, we're just going to hop right into traffic and parking. Questions?
My recollection was that there was a request from the individual 2 people down on my left that the computer simulation of the noise on game day be done not on a 24-hour basis, but on a game basis. And that was one of the amendments we were looking forward to receiving.
I'll make sure that that's in the final report that everybody gets issued.
Not to be curmudgeonly, but putting that in the final report after we make whatever recommendations we make seems a little bit out of order.
Okay, good evening again. Nice to see everybody again from last month. This is just an update on the traffic and parking study that we prepared. Again, I'm Curtis Rowe from Kimley Horn and Associates. And since the last month, we received comments from the city of Fort Collins in which we attended a meeting with the city and Transport. That meeting occurred on August 18th. And the results of that study was that we refined the traffic and parking study based upon comments and input received from that meeting. And so this will provide the presentation of that. I'll try not to, go through the same materials that we did last time, but just kind of as a reminder, I do see that there's some new faces in here that missed last meeting, and so it may be beneficial to go through some of it. Again, our study began last fall with the data collection that we did at the existing CSU Rams versus Nevada Wolfpack game, and that was a game in which we counted the driveways into the Hughes Stadium, and so the total traffic generated on that game day was 4,090 vehicles. The attendance of that game was 15,234. The peak hour entering volume was 1618. The peak 15-minute was 474, which shows that that was fairly uniform over that entire hour. The vehicle occupancy was 2.3 persons per vehicle. From a survey collected at the driveways, somebody actually looking in the vehicles and measuring or marking how many people were actually in those vehicles. The calculated vehicle occupancy was 2.8 persons per vehicle. For that game, 37% of the traffic arrived during the common peak hour. The peak hour exiting volume after the game ended, which CSU won, was 2,858 vehicles, which represents 66% of the traffic. So this is parking and trip generation assumptions. Can't read that title there on the top, I'm sorry, apologize for that. But what we're studying is an at-capacity event. Of course, the stadium is planned to hold 40,000 spectators. We, based upon national data and for this stadium on campus, we believe the vehicle occupancy would be somewhere around 2.6 persons per vehicle. That's a little bit less than what was calculated at Hughes. The mode split, this is one of the refinements in the traffic study, is that we anticipate that 55% of the spectators will arrive by automobile. 12.5% or 5,000 people will use transit. Another 12.5% or 5,000 again will walk or bike inside of campus. That also includes, the fraternity and sorority locations just north of Laurel Street. And then the remaining 20% or 8,000 will walk or bicycle to campus. Those are students and other people that live in close proximity, close enough that they can walk and also ride a bicycle. So we believe that that would be broken out to be 5,000 bikelists and 3,000 walkers. In that meeting with the city on August 18th, Transport was there in attendance as well. And so we talked to them about the transit assumptions, and they definitely are able to and willing to accommodate transit needs up to 5,000 people. They actually said they could accommodate transit up to 10,000. But 5,000 is definitely a possibility, and we think that that's probably more realistic in terms of the number of people to attend via transit. Because of this being an on-campus stadium, we think that the arrival and departure percentages will differ a little bit from what's observed at Hughes. So we anticipate that 33% of the total traffic is expected to arrive during common peak hour, and 60% of that traffic then would depart after the game.
Curtis, when you say peak hour, is it the half hour before and a half hour after, or 45 minutes before? What references peak hour?
So it's the peak hour of the traffic. So it's the 1 hour time period. We study the actually 15-minute intervals. More than likely for the game, it's going to be, the 1 hour directly before kickoff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then departure definitely would be 1 hour after the game ends. Yes, sir.
You all probably dealt with this with the city. I'm just curious. Since Max is not going to be the majority of that 5,000, is there a plan for where these folks would be moved from, and the parking that would be available that would enable the transit system to carry what's probably going to be 3,000 or 4,000 of that in a way other than Max?
That was discussed during our meeting with Kurt from Transport, and discussions in terms of which routes. There are several routes, of course, that travel to and within CSU campus, and so there's a large area that's served from those transit routes, and so that's some additional work that Transport will need to look at in terms of the end, in terms of getting people to campus. But the CSU Transit Center will be heavily used by those transit riders as well as Max.
Well, I can understand where they can drop them off. I'm just curious about, is the assumption that they are picking up people close to their residences and therefore they don't have to handle parking, or are they assuming that a substantial number of these several thousand would be coming in by car and needing to park somewhere and be picked up at the location where they parked?
I think both of those things will happen. With certain transit stops located throughout the city, you'll definitely see parking demand in those areas and those locations. And so, transit riders will get on the bus at those locations, and so there will be parking from those. But I think you actually will see that happening in both cases. One of the main things I think in terms of transport and getting people to the campus would be an increased participation in MAX, and they'll actually decrease or reduce the headways of those transit vehicles so that they can get more people to campus using MAX during the game day. So there'll be an actual special event transit operations for a game day. And then the same as last time, we just looked at the parking then for the people that we anticipate needing to accommodate on campus. We looked at a parking radius of 3/4 to 1 mile radius, and that's what that graphic shows. This color here is within a 1/4 mile. This is within a 1/2 mile. This is within 3/4 of a mile, and you can see here this shaded area, these parking lots. That's the NRRC. And then this last radius circle is a mile from the proposed stadium, and that encompasses a majority of the South Campus area, which is shown right here. So with these mode split assumptions, the parking demand and availability, an at-capacity event parking demand we think will be 8,462 cars. That was calculated, of course, based on...
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Carl.
Are you just going over the stuff we got before, or are you going to highlight the changes you made?
Yes, I'll try to make sure I highlight the changes.
That's what I'm interested in.
Okay, great. Yeah, I don't want to confuse anyone. I know that there's some people here that weren't here last time, so I don't know how much to go over again.
Right, but that's too bad for them.
Okay.
We got a lot to do tonight.
Okay, very good. So based upon the number of parking spaces on campus, there is a significant amount of removals planned with other buildings and such, that we anticipate that there's about 9,500 parking spaces. The Saturday demand is 2,476. We ran our Park Plus model and see that the Saturday demand is 2,476 spaces. And so that means that there are 6,982 that are available for parking. And of course, as mentioned, the demand, which this is a new number, is 8,462 parking spaces. So we believe that the existing supply will serve 83% of the demand in the CSU lots. What that does mean, though, is that we need to find an additional 1,500 parking spaces to equal the demand. Yes, sir.
Okay, on that map, what's your circulation pattern going to be for those lots? I counted them last time. There's 66 lots there. How do people get to them?
The only road closures that we're proposing is Pitkin Street to the north of the stadium and Meridian. Other than that, we propose that South Drive be two-way so that traffic can get into and out of these parking lots. Other than that, we don't anticipate any other circulation modifications in terms of how to get people to their parking lots.
So you're saying the people will know exactly which of those lots they're going to go to?
Correct. What we'll do...
No open lots, just like you have a ticket to park, you go to the park this place, and that's it?
Yeah, I mean, we're recommending, and we're working with CSU to provide recommendations in terms of, types of parking in certain locations for general parking for people that need to park generally and won't know the campus as well. We'll direct them to certain lots. Probably mostly they'll be the South Campus parking folks. Then people that need to park, the VIPs, tailgating areas, all of those areas will be defined. VIPs, season ticket holders, any designation that they want to create, they can then identify parking per specific areas, and that's the way that they'll define it based upon the number of spaces that are in those lots and the demand.
Okay, same plan for Thursday night?
Yes, be the same plan for Thursday.
Identical? Same lots and all that?
It would be the same plan, yes. You know, depending on, you know, game time of Thursday night, there may be an overlap of, you know, NRC.
There will be.
Yep. So it depends on the game time.
So, same plan, but it won't work?
It should work. You know, the people that are parking on campus, in the campus area, if they are here for that part of the stadium, then they will, you know, they'll occupy those spaces. As the campus demand, as the people leave the campus, then they will be replaced by people coming to park for the event in that evening. Yes.
So how does that work if I work till 6 o'clock and the event starts at 5 and somebody's paid for my parking spot on campus then?
I don't anticipate there'd be any prepaid parking areas. You know, that it could be that, but it'll be, you know, paid per lot based upon what spaces are available. So it'd be similar to, you know, like if you've gone to a Colorado Rockies game, and you know those games that are weekday games, it's the, you know, it'd be a similar type of concept, you know, for parking and supplying
And I
that
think,
demand.
if I can jump in, I mean, I don't think the traffic study, parking study was designed to have a specific plan. I mean, where they've identified spaces, and we've got a situation where Thursday may be different than Saturday. Certainly think one of the recommendations this group can make is something that would address that. I know we've had lots of discussion about, and this is how Boulder, I made a few calls to try to understand how Boulder does it. They have dozens of lots, little lots all over the place, and people who have season tickets have a designated lot. They have a hang tag. They have to go by police to get to those lots, and they know where they're going. So, you know, we need to make some recommendations relative to, you know, I think we all agree you can't have open cash-paid lots that are a few spots all around campus, because you'll have people driving all over looking for those open spots.
Okay, so then going back to this, we're looking at the need for an additional 1,500 parking spaces. And so the recommendations in terms of where those parking spaces can be provided is that we recommend that CSU approach the Natural Resources Research Center, the NRRC, to use their available parking. They're shown here. This is an aerial of the NRRC. This was taken on a weekday. You can see how full those parking lots are there, but on the weekend, Saturday, they're only 5% occupied, and so there's a lot of available parking in that zone. And as shown in the original, that's 3/4 mile distance from the proposed stadium. So that would accommodate an additional 12.5% of the demand, which would take us up to approximately 95% of the demand for an at-capacity event, a 40,000 spectator event. An additional area that we think could be used and could be parked would be the tennis courts complex at South Campus. There's probably about 1,000 surface or dirt lot spaces that could be provided around those tennis courts. We actually looked at the area and think that you could probably get 1,400 spaces in there, but conservatively looking at 1,000. So that would accommodate the rest of the demand. Of course, the CSU master plan has identified additional parking structures in the future, and as those, if and when those parking structures were ever constructed on campus, you know, we believe that those would be used to serve the demand as well. When that happens, then, you know, possibly the reliance upon the NRRC or even the tennis court site, you know, could go away as demand is served elsewhere. Yes.
The tennis court site, most of it is gravel, and most of the parking lot is not striped. Only the asphalt part is striped. So most of the parking places you sort of have no idea, and if people just come in there and start parking, then you're not going to get the maximum
Right,
use out of it.
exactly. So it'd be like Hughes, similar. Yep. Okay, so then other parking recommendations, this is the same as last time, just that we're recommending wayfinding, their possible shuttle route, because as mentioned, South Campus is 1 mile from the stadium. providing information with tickets like we talked about, the parking lot size to fit the demand, and then just have parking lot signage on hand for those parking lots. The trip generation, based upon the mode assumptions, again, the vehicle trip generation of an at-capacity event, we believe, is 8,462 vehicles. If 1/3 of those vehicles arrive during a common peak hour right before the game, that's 2,792 vehicles. And with the exiting peak hour of 60%, we're looking at 5,000 vehicles leaving. So to go through some of the what we found from results of the traffic analysis is, the same Harmony Road and College Avenue. This is actually documented just based upon existing conditions. There's been discussions with CDOT in the city. We know that this, is probably something that would happen, long-term in the future, but, CDOT's looking at Harmony Road being 3 lanes each direction from Loveland into Fort Collins. A good portion of College Avenue through Fort Collins is already 3 lanes each direction. Of course, just through this intersection, it's two lanes. This would be needed just based upon actual peak hour. It's also something that would be needed if football games were continued to be played at Hughes and we had an at-capacity event at Hughes. This improvement would also be needed for that stadium. At Laurel and College, here's a fairly recent area. You can even see that Laurel is under construction there, but the eastbound left turn movement, that's a peak hour critical movement, and so there may be some additional signal timing needed to get people from Laurel to northbound College. Otherwise, what we think may happen is traffic may redistribute to turn left at Meldrum Street right before that, Howes or Mason. So there's other, grid network streets in that area, and so traffic may divert to those other streets. But we looked at it in terms of at College and Laurel and see a fairly high volume of eastbound to northbound left turn movements at that intersection. South Drive and Shields, again, we provide the recommendation that South Drive be converted to allow 2-way traffic, and that is so that traffic can get into and out of the parking lots off of South Drive. And so this intersection, of course, is unsignalized. Right now it's only serving one-way traffic inbound. So more than likely this could be westbound right turns only. So you could restrict it to that unless you have a police officer control that intersection. That would then allow traffic to also turn left and head south on Shields. Same
One
thing.
question.
Yes, Carl.
What happens to the traffic that's parked on South? They just don't park there that day?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, to make it 2-lane, you're going to have to kill all the parking along South, right?
Just the angle parking on the north.
Yeah, right.
The parallel parking on the south we think can remain. And also potentially you could allow parallel parking on the north side of South Drive. But, there may be some designation since you have those angle parking spaces and those are designated there. It might be easiest just to have no parking on that north side.
And one more question. Why do you care about Harmony?
Why do I care about Harmony?
Yeah, in terms of access. Harmony's way the heck down there.
Well, I'm a traffic engineer, so I like studying traffic. And in terms of that location, I just noticed that it's an intersection that needs improvements. And so we look at it, we study it, and we see that it needs improvements. And so that's why we discuss it.
Okay, so you're not planning on having big lots down there in Harmony where you can put people onto the max from there and so on?
That's correct, no.
You're just talking about Harmony itself?
Yep, just looking at that intersection, just trying to be helpful. And so anyway, so Pitkin Street and Shields, again, it's really just the same as South and Shields. Either westbound right turns only, or if there's police officer control, then we can have traffic head south. It might be good that both of those intersections actually only serve westbound rights on the departure so that that traffic then is funneled to the north to keep traffic kind of away from the stadium. And so you have your departure volume heading north on Shields instead of south on Shields out of those two streets. Prospect Road and Center. We talked about this intersection last time. The southbound left turn departure is a critical movement. Also, the northbound right turn is a critical movement in the departure peak hour, so after the game. Also, we'll have a fair number of pedestrian crossings, we believe, at this intersection. So we are recommending police officer control so that pedestrians can get across safely, and we can control left turn movements southbound as well as northbound right turn movements for traffic wanting to head east on Prospect. Prospect Road in College, same intersection as discussed before. The critical movements are the southbound left, the southbound through, the eastbound through, and the eastbound right after the game. And that makes sense because, of course, the stadium is over here. CSU is over here to the northwest, and so, we have a lot of traffic that wants to head south on College, and we have a lot of traffic that wants to head east on Prospect. And so those are the critical movements through that intersection. We think we have recommended special event signal timing, but this is a busy intersection, and it could also benefit from police officer control.
If it's coming later, I'd be happy to wait for it, but since we're talking about Prospect and College, one of the things that I asked was whether or not you could give us a ballpark idea of the magnitude of the exiting traffic on Prospect by comparing the outflow after the game to what Prospect looks like during rush hour. Did you all have an opportunity to do that?
Right, comparing it to the rush hour volume, the departure volume through this intersection would probably be about 25% greater than the weekday peak hour.
Well, that's very useful. I will say that living just south of where the stadium will be, assuming it's built there, during rush hour it takes me 35 to 40 minutes to get to I-25. And so if you're talking about 25% more, that gives us an idea of the kind of congestion we might expect.
It is 25% more, but it's 25% more compared to a non-football event, and so it would be about the same as what you have from a Hughes event, because Prospect Road is heavily traveled for traffic to and from Hughes Stadium, and so there is a large percentage of traffic that is added to that intersection also for an at-capacity event at Hughes Stadium. And then here's a graphic. This is the same as before. So Carl, this is the same information. On police officer control, we're recommending police officer control at several intersections surrounding campus. These are intersections where we anticipate a large number of pedestrian movements, also a large number of turn movements, and so to get traffic moving most efficiently after a game, and in a few of these even before the game, we've identified that police officer control would be beneficial. Yes, sir.
I just want to follow up on your response to Alan's question just now. You're saying that the traffic on Prospect, at the intersection of Prospect and College, is going to be similar to what we have now at Hughes?
It's the traffic at Prospect and College will be approximately 25% more with the stadium compared to without. But what I was reminding or recognizing was that that's comparing to a peak hour where there isn't, a game. If you're actually comparing game at Hughes versus game at, this on-campus stadium location, the difference in that traffic may be 5%.
The
10%.
The stadium is going to be located so close to Prospect, and yet the traffic is only going to be 5% more in that area as compared to Hughes, where it's couple miles away and has other routes to disperse to?
Correct. I mean, it's 5 to 10% more, I would assume. We're talking about an at-capacity event at Hughes, and this stadium, because of the parking all around campus, we have people parking at, along Drake at South Campus. We have people parking up along Laurel. With those parking, we have people parking along Shields. That, this stadium also, this traffic will be dispersed to surrounding street networks also. So here's a slide just showing where we're recommending special event signal timing. The list is similar to what we had before based upon some of our distribution revisions by working through the city, which we greatly appreciated. We identified some additional ones along Drake. We think that, we'll have some more traffic on Drake, and so a few of these are new added, like Drake Road and LeMay and Drake Road and Timberline. But otherwise, the same corridors. You could see, the Mulberry corridor at College, the Drake corridor at College, LeMay, Timberline, Harmony and College, which we all talked about that intersection, Laurel and College, and then the Prospect Road corridor from Shields to College. And then this is just a repeat from last time. We discussed the road closures of Pitkin Street along the north side of the stadium, Meridian Avenue to the north. We've recommended South Drive to be two-way traffic so that parking people can get in and out. One thing that will be needed to allow South Drive to be two-way is that this sidewalk right in front of the intramural field buildings would need to be reconfigured. If you can see that in that aerial there at the bottom, because that sidewalk comes out into the street. So that would need to be reconfigured to allow that. This is an exhibit that was presented last time as well. It just shows the sidewalk locations within and surrounding campus. We are recommending several locations for sidewalk upgrades. There are, 2-foot, 3-foot sidewalks in many locations, as you well know. Yes, sir.
Question, as was mentioned before, we do have quite a bit tonight.
Yes.
The question was good about what is the difference we're seeing here versus what we saw before. Mm-hmm. Is there much left on the presentation, or are you almost there?
This is it right here. Last
Okay.
slide.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, sir. So then, for transit and bicycle, as our meeting with the city, we discussed with transport an increased service of both MAX and also their regular routes. We had a discussion relative to locating bicycle racks in close proximity to the stadium. We anticipate 5,000 bicyclists to the stadium, and so of course we need a place that's conveniently located at the proposed on-campus stadium so that people can drop off their bikes there. Possible other improvements for consideration is that shuttle to and from South Campus, because that's a mile distance from there. And, although during nice weather days, we'll get ridership, but, when the weather is bad for the November games, we may have a increased ridership on the shuttle. Yes, sir.
Speaking of the inclement weather, what do you figure the effect of inclement weather would be on bicycle riders and pedestrians to the stadium?
I would anticipate that the bicycle riders would decrease. If it's snowing or raining, then I think we would end up with less of that travel mode. Most definitely, it may affect the attendance of the game as well, but I do think we would see a reduction in that, other than the people that live in close proximity to campus and know that it's much more convenient still to ride a bicycle over or walk, even if it is raining, because they're not going to be afraid to be out in the elements. If they're going to the game, they're going to be out in the elements for that 3.5 hour time frame anyway, so I don't think it'll discourage them too much. And then otherwise, just the pedestrian underpass Prospect Road that was discussed. So really, in summary, the big changes from last time, and they aren't big changes, actually, they were minor changes, is just the refinement relative to the mode split. 55% of arrivers we think will be arriving by vehicle or via vehicle, and then some improvement recommendations, which we will further work with the city of Fort Collins on those intersections and what improvements we're seeing and what recommendations we have so that traffic can move most efficiently through those intersections. Any other questions?
I'd just like to confirm that I heard you properly, because I'd hate to repeat something I thought I heard and be wrong.
Yep.
At least if I could avoid it. Did I hear you to say that you anticipated that the volume of cars letting out after a game going down Prospect could be thought of as approximately 125% of a rush hour flow? I mean, you said 25% more, so but basically that's what I heard.
Yeah, and actually I was thinking of it in terms of the delay through the intersection, so it's about a 25% increase in delay. And so it's the wait time. It's not necessarily attributable to vehicles, but that's, that'd be the additional wait time through that intersection.
Thank you.
Yes.
Other questions?
Just to ask one more question. As we talk about the weekday games and that sort of thing, how does that tend to affect? I mean, do people tend to be more apt towards taking public transportation during weekdays, walking, more automobiles? What's
Absolutely.
your experience with?
Yeah, absolutely. When there's a weekday game, I think the whole effect of campus will change. You'll see people, even the commuting public that travels on roads adjacent to campus, when they know that there is potentially a weeknight game, even though, of course, there's none scheduled right now, but there may be in the future. Even that traffic diverts and stays away from the event. The BMW Championship that was just held in Denver this past weekend, the PGA Championship, we did the traffic work for that event, and it was the same effect. Thursday and Friday of that event occurred during the peak hour, but traffic actually worked very well because informing the public, they know about the event, so that traffic redistributes. And so what you have is you just have the people that want to be there, that need to be there, and so you actually accommodate the traffic fairly well.
And I'm guessing that students also just tend to kind of stay on campus for the most part in a lot of cases, so that traffic's already kind of out of the aspect.
Absolutely. Instead of making a trip home after their day at classes, if they're going to attend the game or even attend the festivities surrounding the game, then they'll just stay on campus, and then that's one less trip on the surrounding street network. Yes, sir.
Along those same lines, though, you were addressing the issue of other commuters avoiding the area of campus. But if it's a weekday event, wouldn't the percentage of pedestrians, bicyclists, things such as that coming to the game, wouldn't that decrease and possibly the number of people coming in cars increase because you don't have a Saturday where it's a leisurely pace, you have a few hours, you've got the whole day off, you've got people possibly coming right after work and things like that. So wouldn't the percentages change significantly there?
Possibly. Again, relative to the parking that's being provided on campus, I think we'll still see a similar distribution. It's it's a desire of CSU to actually have this distribution of high transit riders, more bicyclists, more walkers. I think for a weekday game, you'll actually even see more transit. So a weekday game compared to Saturday, you're likely to see more transit arrivals. There may be more vehicles. Just depends too, though, when the game starts. We're in the Mountain Time Zone out here, of course. Everything is set based upon television schedules. And so, games could start anywhere between, 6 p.m. for a game here or even 8:30, 9 o'clock, which I've noticed they're doing a lot of those game times now.
I just had a thought, when we were talking about parking, if we utilized any of the lessons learned and the information we have with Moby, when Moby runs full in the parking, was that all in the survey, and how that fits in with what would happen with the stadium and how it's utilized? Is that where?
Yes, we actually did that. That's a good question. I didn't put that in the presentation because I had to cut some stuff out. We've been working on this for quite a while. But yes, we did a Moby study. We did counts before and after a game. That game was in March. It was also against Nevada by coincidence. We didn't just pick the same team, but the same school. But yep, the same thing in terms of how traffic is handled for the arrival. The attendance, it was actually the last game of the season last year, so it was highly attended for that game. It was sold out the senior night. And so, traffic arrivals more dispersed, just the same as what we saw and how we've applied it relative to the football stadium project. Then after the game, pretty much everybody left within the 1 hour time period.
And how about the parking? Were all the parking lots, do we know if they were utilized?
Yes, we did the parking surveys, and so the parking around Moby was definitely utilized.
All
It
the
was
lots
full.
that we've seen here?
Yes. And then there was police officer control surrounding Moby at certain intersections. They actually, the lot that's north of Moby, or that access, and if you go to games, and maybe it's like this for all of them, but you could only make right turns out of that, and so you didn't have any of the conflicting movements, and so it worked really well. And then it was also the same with the way traffic was distributed to Laurel. Up there, traffic was only able to turn right and go eastbound on Laurel.
So there
And
were
all of
lessons
those.
learned and they were incorporated?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks.
Yep.
Let me ask while you're there, we do have people from the City of Fort Collins Traffic Department. They were involved in discussions on this. Would they like to add anything to what we've heard so far?
So my name is Martina Wilkinson. I work with the City of Fort Collins in the Traffic Operations Department as a traffic engineer. And as Curtis has said, we've spent probably the last 4 to 6 weeks working relatively closely with them in trying to refine this study to reflect really what our community looks like. How would we go about doing this? What would be our interest? What would be our attendees' most likely path to get to the stadium? What kind of mode split would we feel comfortable with? And those numbers are all reflected in the refined study that you see today. We haven't had a lot of opportunity to look at the study because they've been working hard on it up through the end of the week, so we've just had about a day to take a look at it. But it's certainly a lot closer to what we would be looking at than maybe what we were looking at a month or two ago. One of the things that we really like is identifying the different critical movements that we would be looking at on the roadway system. What are the movements that we need to be really aware of? Can we deal with those operationally, or do we need to make some infrastructure changes to make those movements really work? One of the other things that we've been looking at really closely is how do we get pedestrians and bicyclists into the stadium and back out of the stadium, not just at roadway crossings, but the entire route for them to get in and out. If they're coming generally from the east, how do we want to get them in? Use the College Avenue underpass, use the sidewalks along Pitkin. So really look really carefully at how do we get these people in and out in a safe manner. We talked a lot about the concept that we think a lot of people might come to these games and park downtown in the parking garage, eat lunch, and then go to the game. So how do you count those people that might be looking to drive in and then park and then use transit? Do we count those as vehicles? Do we count them as transit users? Do we count them as pedestrians towards the end? So as a part of our scoping session, we did a lot of conversations about, what would be the interest? How many folks might come in and park in the Kmart parking lot and then want to use Max to get to the game? You might see a lot of folks come and park at Whole Foods and want to take Max to the game. So it can become really complicated in a really big hurry. And what we've done with this refinement is try to get a general sense of, would we be able to manage it somehow? Do we restrict traffic on Prospect, create rights only or lefts only? Do we do contraflow lanes to get more traffic in and out as opposed to building a lot of infrastructure improvements? So those are all ideas out there, and I think eventually if the stadium moves forward, we'll work really closely with Curtis and the rest of his team and with Colorado State to come up with an operational plan that's going to work. And again, the decision of whether or not to build it isn't up to us, but it is up to us to try to operate the traffic as well as we can together with police services and the police officer control, and we'll certainly do that if the decision is to get it built.
One question. How will you keep traffic on College Avenue moving?
Well, we'll work with the signal timing that we have. We have our traffic management center that we have staffed, and in fact, we staff that for the Hughes games. Now, if we have a home Hughes games, we have traffic in our traffic management center, and we adjust the traffic signal timing as we need to for that, and we would do that in this case as well.
Question, there was a lot of discussion about Prospect and College. Do you know the current level of service at that intersection? And what is the city standard for service?
I don't know if I have the level of service off the top of my head. Certainly, I could look it up for you, what it is. You're talking about the current peak hour, the PM peak hour? Yes. I was going to say we're thinking it's about a level of service D. And again, level of service is ranked from an A to an F, a little bit like a grade report, but we include the level of service E. And when we talk about special events, level of service becomes just one element of what we look at, because level of service can speak to whether you're waiting 45 seconds to get through an intersection or whether you're waiting 60 seconds to get through an intersection, and that changes. If it's 45, it might be a level of service C, and if it's 60 seconds, it might be a level of service, D or E. At a special event, when Hughes lets out, it's not really about whether you can get out of the parking lot in 45 seconds or 60 seconds. What you really want to do is get out of the parking lot, within 5 or 10 minutes. You don't want to be sitting there for a half an hour to get out of the parking lot. So level of service, as we look at it on a peak hour basis, is just one element of what we look at in terms of special events. What we're really trying to do is clear the traffic that we need to clear within a reasonable amount of time. And that may be, and as the gentleman said, we may well see folks coming out of the stadium on Center, turning left onto Prospect, and that queue will be all the way back. But we'll need to manage that with the signal timing and just try to clear the traffic, again, within a reasonable amount of time. And, if that's 10 minutes or if that's 20 minutes, certainly we don't want to have people sitting around for 45 minutes trying to get out of a parking lot.
Any other questions? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Why don't we move to Mike? Are you into the presentation on number C, operations, programming updates?
Yes, thank you, Bob. We really don't have any update or presentation. I think it's just more of a communication of Dr. Frank's intent and what he's communicated previously, and I think when he was sitting here tonight, the university's opinion is that we're a little early to talk about programming of the building and uses of the building, wanted to get through other things first. He certainly has the intent to be very open with the city, with the intergovernmental agreements, and with the neighborhoods in MOUs for use of the building and access to neighborhoods and all those types of things. I'm sure tailgating will come into that, and alcohol use and all those kinds of things. So we don't really have an update at this time. I know it's going to be a topic that's going to be addressed by a community group and a campus group in the future, but as I think we've communicated before, we weren't going to address that at this design development stage. But is that? I know that leaves open questions, but
more of a comment. It's just kind of
disappointing.
Yeah, that's a good word. Because one of the significant concerns of the neighborhoods is the alternative uses and what their noise is going to be like, what their traffic is going to be like. Not to mention the character of people that might go to some of these events at these venues could be different than the character of the people that go to a football game. So it's really, I guess, from my perspective, I would strongly encourage Dr. Frank to accelerate that MOU, that IGA process before any commitment is made to construct the stadium, because otherwise I'm concerned that the existence of the stadium will be used as a lever to try to weigh the decision in favor of allowing these extra events, when in fact we don't actually have an understanding of what the noise impact is, what the traffic impact is. So,
and I think that's one of the reasons that Roger solicited comments, and I think a good majority, not majority, but a good portion of the comments that came back from people are all about exactly that. And
You know, I share in that disappointment, and it's not, I don't think that any of us were looking to say, oh, we're going to do 12 concerts and we want to do drum and bugle corps. And I think it was more an attempt to say, how will this be utilized by the community as well as the university to engage us in events? And it's a generalization, I would think, that, you know, the possibility exists that this could be a venue for concerts. This could be a venue for other athletic events such as, I think that's what I was looking for, that I want to know, I guess, in my mind, that this is more than a stadium, and what does that mean for football games? And I had hoped we could get some kind of guess, or, you know, here's some things that we can consider. And I think the gamut is there. I don't think it's no to anything, but in fairness to the community, something should be said about this is more than a 6-game stadium. I think that's what we were asking. And I think it's, you know, owed to the community and the people who live there, if you're selling it.
I think there's a foundational tension here. Well, one foundational tension is the one the mayor was just talking about. The more things you can use this for, the harder it will be to accommodate the existing character of the neighborhoods. On the other hand, if you don't use it for more things, it doesn't make much sense to have a facility like that. And so what we've got right now is a real challenge in that, as was pointed out, the chances are that if you build this, the fact that it's been built will become the justification for putting all sorts of things in there when people have asked from the beginning to have some idea before it's built what it's going to be used for. The foundational tension procedurally for this committee, which I don't know whether Bob and Roger have got a magic top hat to pull the rabbit out of, is I don't know how this committee completes its work in any kind of meaningful fashion, given the data that's before it. What we've got in front of us is data on how you could make football games work on a Saturday afternoon. Period, full stop. And yet we're talking about a multi-use stadium, for which we have no information on. So it really seems to me, once again, unless Bob and Roger have got some magic, I don't see how we can do our job at all.
Let me respond to that. The next part of the meeting is going to be the recommendations the committee has for Dr. Frank. I think the discussions we've had, and we've covered a lot of the areas, and there's a lot of concerns there. Well, you know, I think what he's looking for is our thoughts on what to have, what not to have. Is it 6 games a year? Is it more events, less events? If you read the piece I put in that was sent out, it talks about doing less the first couple years to see how it works. We're looking for recommendations for the university, and they're looking for input from us. I get this sense that we feel they're going to have it open every night with monster truck events. I'll guarantee you that's not going to happen. Dr. Frank is very interested in our input on what works and what doesn't, and that's the next phase of what we're doing tonight. But I think he's looking for that input, and I think this group has it. But I think to say, if they haven't told us specifically what they're going to do, we can't give a recommendation isn't accurate. He's looking for input from us, saying, from the community, what will work. Do we want to do less initially and then see how it works? I also, in the piece, put in a neighborhood relationship committee that will talk about these things every year, and it will evolve to deal with the parking problems. If you have trash problems, all those other things, this committee can take care of that. So he's looking for those thoughts from us instead of them coming up with everything and telling us this is what they want to do, and then we respond to it. It's an open slate at this point. So I don't look at that as a negative. I look at that as he's truly looking for input on what we think it should look like. Now, does that guarantee you'll do exactly what we recommend? No, it doesn't. It's a recommendation. But I look at an open slate as more inviting for the community to give input than saying, here's what we're going to do, respond to it. He's not doing that. And that's the next piece of what we're getting to, is to give that kind of input and see what the committee would support to send forward. So I guess I look at it differently, is the thought that we can't give the university any recommendation at all, I disagree with.
I didn't say that, and I feel as if I'm getting an argument on something I didn't say in response to my reservation. My reservation is that all we really have is information on what football games would look like on Saturday afternoon, and we've got a multipurpose stadium and other days. And I think we can use that as a starting point for some ideas, but I think it's a very incomplete starting point. It's better than nothing.
2 years ago at the Board of Governors meeting, Dr. Frank had gone through some suggestions, actually, what could be done at the multi-use facility, because they looked specifically at the University of Utah. Commencement was one thing that he suggested. He did mention maybe the use of concerts, using the facility for corporate gatherings, things like that. So I think we can all come to the realization of what it would be. But as Bob said, I think those are what we should go back to Dr. Frank at. So it's not that they haven't mentioned that. 2 years ago, he did mention that. And actually, when they had the stadium design committee, they went to several different locations and looked at what other events were held there. And what I mentioned were several of those type of things. So I think that information's out there. Maybe we just need to go back to, the stadium website and look at some of that information, because it is out there.
And I guess my only suggestion is that that we focused a lot on the football impacts, because I think that's the largest potential impact, and everything else that may end up in the stadium will be scaled down somewhat. So if we can make recommendations that address the biggest and obvious concerns that the stadium presents for a football game, that those recommendations will likely apply in a scaled down version for any event that may come, whether it's graduation or a concert or a band presentation or a corporate event. And certainly, I think we've heard a lot, concerts is one that people are real concerned about. And Bob, I think, has suggested in his, that we say that's one thing, that's a line that we draw that we don't think is acceptable. But others, so if the university takes that recommendation and throws concerts off the list of possibilities, then I really think you start to look at any other, university or community focused event is likely going to have less impacts than a football game. Concerts being one that clearly could have more of an impact in a different way. So let's put that in a different bucket and strongly suggest that we don't think that fits at this stadium. But try to make recommendations that are that are useful, no matter what underneath a football game happens there. That the concepts of protecting neighborhoods, assigned parking, protecting staff and faculty parking, whatever it happens to be that we make recommendations, should fit in any other type of use that comes up.
Well, I think a kind of a phased approach is a good approach to go by too. So maybe year one, we say, let's have one concert, and let's see how it goes, so that we can work with the neighborhood and go from there. Corporate events of 500 to 1,000 people, I don't think anybody here is even going to know that even took place for the most part, especially considering they're probably going to be inside, right? So. I think that there's levels and steps that we can take till that we get to a comfort level. And to Bob's point, having twice a year meetings with the neighborhood recommendation, I think that's a great idea. So.
I'm sorry, Roger, but pardon me if I don't feel too reassured to know that football's going to be the whatever term you used, that's going to be the loudest thing that's there or whatever. I think it really, it says right on the screen, a multi-purpose stadium. And I just don't like the fact that we're told to use our imagination as to what might be held there, how often things might be held there. It's not just a matter of whether the football is going to be the big event, it's going to be how many events are held there as far as the neighborhood is concerned. And, we were brought here to talk about the impacts, and not only here, but the discussion in the community has been, on one hand, well, it's only 6 or 7 days a year, but on the other hand, it's, for revenue purposes, it's going to be many uses during the year. So I think Alan put it very eloquently that, this is a guessing game for us, and it's really not fair to the committee to not have more substantial and concrete plans as to what this is going to be used for. We certainly just aren't going to ease into it over a period of time. As we get used to it, as our tolerance level builds up, then we'll have other events. I'm sorry, but I find that offensive.
Well, talking about a segue, moving to because we've already started that discussion, let's continue that. Let's move to number 4. Let's look at the actual recommendations the committee wants to do to President Frank. Let me read, I think you all received the letter when you first were asked to participate in this committee and for your stakeholders. And what it talked about was an opportunity for the community to learn about the preliminary design development and to provide feedback to ensure a high-quality project, to identify potential concerns, including parking, traffic, noise, and other impacts to the city, and find workable solutions that address the needs of the community at large, and to foster transparency and communication between the university, the city, and the surrounding neighborhoods. That was the charge given to you when you were asked to participate on this committee. And as President Frank mentioned, he's going forward the first week of October and is looking for input from us before then. We're running short on time, so to get a recommendation to him, we put this on the agenda tonight to talk about ideas. Now, as we've had the committee meetings, it's been a pretty open forum. Thrown a lot of ideas out, a lot of things. It's a little different now if you look at an idea that the committee will support to move forward to Dr. Frank. So as we talk about these things now, we have to look at it from the standpoint of the committee supporting what you want to move forward with. And I think that's some of the give and take we've had already, talking about what will we support as a committee to move forward with. So as we look at the different areas, and we can go back through them and see, we've got a lot of input from people, have sent a lot of thoughts in, and they can probably speak to their ideas a little bit more as we go through this. But if you have an idea on one of the issues, talk to it and see if the committee is supportive of moving that idea forward. We've got a lot of issues we talked about. I know there are differences of opinion on some of them. This is the point where we have to get to that. Yeah, Roger, do you have a comment?
Well, I was just going to say, this is a tough way to do this when we've got a lot of input, that maybe we go through by subject area and try to find areas where there's consensus and agreement, because I think there's a lot of points where I believe most of the committee probably agrees on. And then we can talk about things that we've had other ideas that are maybe more specific that I'm sure there's disagreement on. Is that in a way to move forward that folks feel comfortable with?
Roger, I apologize for putting you on the spot, although I'm only trying to put you on the spot. Whether you really end up there or not is a different story. But what I would find very useful, given the number of comments that are here, is that if you, and if you have had a chance to consult with Bob may have suggested some things to you, if you've got a sense of starting at what you've heard that you think is meaningful to share and least controversial, if you could basically triage us through this, at least
I mean, because if we go back to what Al wants to suggest, then you'll get Al's view, and you'll have somebody else's view. And I just think that if you were to take the lead in sorting through this from sort of your hunch about least controversial to most controversial, we might have the best shot of getting through some things.
Okay. Well, let me start with parking.
Start with these.
Doug, you want to start?
Roger, I was talking to one person last week or so, and they used a very good term for it. You know, we've got an elephant in the room here tonight. Those of you that read the email that I sent to Roger, that Roger distributed to you, just a few weeks ago, abruptly, Jack Graham was fired as athletic director. I don't think that anybody would dispute that since Jack was hired in December of 2011, that he was the face of this stadium. Whether the stadium succeeds without him as athletic director, I guess, remains to be seen, but certainly I don't think anybody would deny that the stadium is going to have a harder time without him as athletic director. Secondly, since Jack Graham was fired, there's been a lot of discussion. There's been coverage in both the Post and the local newspaper about the lack of fundraising, or the disappointing fundraising that's come about. So it's kind of going back to Alan's point from a different angle, but how are we going to make recommendations? Why should we make a recommendation for something that certainly seems like, you know, it's just not going to come about? Dr. Frank addressed us tonight and talked certainly more than what's been talked in the past about how our the input we give will be valuable whether the stadium goes through or not, and more about how there would be other alternatives. And he's been interviewed and talking about these other alternatives. So I really think that the main recommendation that should come from this group is that if the money has not been raised for this stadium by the deadline that was set by Dr. Frank, then we shouldn't be going ahead with it. I don't know how many of you might have happened to see the City Council work session on the 26th, but a member of the city leadership expressed the frustration of not knowing what was happening with the stadium. The city is trying, right now, working on the West Central area plan. They can't really go through with that because they don't know whether the stadium's going to be there or not. And this has been going on for 2.5 years. I think that CSU owes it to the leadership of this town and also to the citizens of this town to make a decision on this, or else just pull the plug on it. But I think we need to recommend, and we don't make recommendations until we see 3.5 weeks from now at the Board of Governors meeting just what the decision is. I think it's pointless to do that. But what needs to be done, if this stadium doesn't go through, we need to have a thorough analysis of what can be done with the Hughes Stadium and that site.
Can I interject? I think the premise of this committee from the onset was to approach this as if the stadium were built, whether or not it were to be built, and if so, what are the recommendations based off the premise that the stadium is built. And I think, like Bob suggested, we should continue on with that. You know, whether Jack was fired or not, I think that's neither here nor there. The premise of this was stadiums being built, what are the impacts to CSU, all of our collective groups, and what recommendations do we put forth to CSU. I think we should continue with that focus, as that's what we were charged with.
Couldn't agree more. We are here to make a recommendation based on the idea that a new stadium will be built. If we find out elsewhere in 3.5 weeks, then we can reconvene or have other ideas put forth at that time, but I think we need to move forward as planned.
In the Collegian about a week or so ago, Dr. Frank was interviewed, and he actually, I think it was really for the first time, placed some blame on the opponents of the stadium that we were being simplistic in thinking that something could be done with Hughes. As we move forward and give the public the idea that this stadium is going to happen, we further hurt any effort in trying to do something with Hughes. People have got in their mindset, because from the very beginning this discussion has been that this stadium was going to happen. And even though community members are against that, the idea of that happening, they are still thinking that it's a done deal. Now, if we want to have any hope for donations being made to Hughes, which more and more looks like that's what's going to need to be done, then we need to stop talking about this stadium being a done deal, or anything that implies that it's a done deal.
I would suggest we wait on that for 3.5 weeks. I mean, Doug, if you want to write up all the suggestions you want for Hughes, that's great. We know where you stand on this. We were tasked to do this, to come up with any problems or recommendations we may see with the stadium on campus. Let's finish our job tonight, and then in 3.5 weeks, we'll find out, okay? But to say now we're going to stop after you guys have put in 5.5 months of this seems silly. I'm sorry. So I understand your frustration. I really understand your anger. It's been understood all along. Let's move forward with tonight, and then you can either cheer in 3.5 weeks or you can cry, whatever it is, okay? But can we just move forward and make the recommendations and then find out what happens? And hopefully, if it's Hughes that goes forward, like Tony Frank said today, they'll take some of those recommendations that we made for tonight and said, wow, let's look at noise issues, let's look at lighting issues. If it's a new stadium, wow, let's look at noise issues, let's look at lighting issues, okay? So, Bob, please take this forward.
Okay, I was quickly coming up with some of the common themes that I think I've heard. So parking and traffic would be one, develop a strong event day. I'll call it event day instead of game day. Event day, traffic and parking plan that protects the neighborhoods and does not allow parking or through traffic in the neighborhoods. I think that's one thing. 2, restrict on-campus parking to either assign prepaid pass holders or staff and faculty parking.
Can I hop in there? I had a great, somebody came with a great suggestion about some of those smaller lots, because there's a lot of those lots on campus that only hold like 10 or 15 cars, that maybe we make the recommendation that those are kind of limited just for faculty, so that it doesn't create excess. I mean, to kind of Carl's point about having 66 lots, if there's a dozen of those with 10 spaces in them, it just might eliminate some confusion and some headaches. That was a point that was brought up to me that I thought made some sense.
Mr. Chairman, as a matter of procedure, could we just kind of listen to all of Roger's recommendations, and then maybe we can go back and talk about them? So I just think, look at the time, and we're not going to get through all this. So I'd love to hear what he has to say, and then let's go back through the list and either thumbs up or thumbs down.
Okay, 3rd, focus non-assigned parking on off-campus sites with either shuttle service or adjacent access to transit. And I guess we could add or within a mile radius for parking, because that would cover the 2 lots that Kimley Horn. But the theory being, if you're paying cash, you got to park in an outlying lot. 4, commit to building the additional parking capacity, i.e. parking structures, to be completed prior to the stadium opening.
I wouldn't make that condition.
Okay.
I don't think CSU can afford those. They stopped talking about them quite a while ago.
Okay,
I don't think we should count on them at all as a solution. So.
We get a chance to
Yeah, let's wait and debate. So those are parking and traffic items. I think those are the 4 main that I heard.
Shall we talk about
now we
them
can talk about them.
Okay. What I just said.
Thank you.
I would be opposed to the stipulation that the things that are being discussed would be built, partly because I know that even when it comes to the engineering lot, there are other things that the university has talked about in the past that have recently gotten lost in the shuffle in terms of the Institute for Learning and Teaching addition and views to the foothills. And so I think that there will be discussions that have to happen on campus
related to the details of any campus facility. And I think I would not be in favor of short-circuiting those discussions by saying we know that every new parking structure is a good idea.
Okay. So then I had some just game day coping items, one being develop a neighborhood ambassador program. I think that is critical, and that is just being a good neighbor. And that could include canvassing prior to events. That could include game day folks with, Ram hats where people can help direct folks. It could include post-game cleanup brigades. I think also, though, I have worked with the city to identify pedestrian and bicycle routes, and I think it would be reasonable to say that do not cut through neighborhoods, because that's something that we've heard. So we know we need to have identifiable routes. Let's have them. Let's have a map. Let's have people there to guide people, and let's make sure that it does not cut through neighborhoods. Third would be to have a discussion about tailgating, and what does that mean? That's an operational issue. I know the police have stated that that's a concern, and just understanding that. Frankly, what is the alcohol policy right now, and how does it apply at tailgating at Hughes? Let's just make sure that that's involved. That's, again, a game day item. And I did not include, because a couple people said, let's prohibit alcohol sales. I think that's a larger policy. The university will decide its alcohol policy. It's really how does it get applied if it's still alcohol allowed at games.
Although the alcohol policy during games can have an impact on the surrounding neighborhoods. So I don't know that I would agree.
Good.
I think we should, as a matter of fact, not have alcohol for the general public at the stadium 6 blocks from my house for 20,000 people. I think that's just crazy. And quite frankly, ought to be illegal. But I know that, universities want to get fans who want to come and get drunk. And the more alcohol you have, the more fans you have. It's almost a direct proportion. And I think it's a mistake.
Other game day event issues is the idea of restricting certain types of events for a certain period of time at the beginning of the year, or at the beginning of once the stadium is constructed. We have heard limited to one, maybe concert or no concerts, but I think we ought to make some recommendation about event types and usage for a period of time after the stadium is constructed. Okay. Anything else on any other game day?
Should we make a recommendation now?
Do you have anything else on game day? Anyone questions?
Just to the alcohol thing, I think that there is opportunity to maybe make that, beer is what we do in Fort Collins, right? So make that a piece of, I know I'd get killed by a lot of alumni if I didn't say that they didn't enjoy being able to have a beer at Hughes right now, right? So make it something that is representative of Fort Collins as opposed to, just a smash and get bashed type of thing, right? Apparently somebody didn't like my idea on that. I don't know. I think that there's a good opportunity here. There's already beer sales on campus, but I don't know. I think there's opportunity to make this kind of part of the community as opposed to just something where everybody's going to get drunk and go run in Carl's neighborhood, I guess. And then to the point on the kind of the early event or having an event the first year or something like that, maybe we encourage a kickoff event that is prior to a football game so that people kind of get to know what the parking patterns are. They get to know, it's a, welcome the community into this stadium so that they can see it and really kind of be a part of it. I think that could be something that is very beneficial and very exciting for a lot of people, and then kind of helps reduce issues, come that first September football game.
This suggestion is something that
representatives from the city will have to mull over whether or not there's really anything they can do about it. But I know one of the things that has preoccupied some of my neighbors in the Shealy subdivision, which has maybe a street and a half going in from the north to the south, Balsam and Juniper, Balsam almost entirely, Juniper a little, that are rentals. And then if you go down South Whitcomb, a pretty long chunk of South Whitcomb is rentals. But almost all of the rest of the neighborhood outside of those areas are single-family owned, kids play in the street. One of the things that's really worried them is that the stadium will create an incentive for more rentals to move into the neighborhood. And what worries them, and this is in fact relevant to game day, is the desire of some people to be able to basically tailgate in their front yards before they stagger over to the game and then stagger back. And so I don't know what city policy is, but anything that would enable the university and the city to work together in the neighborhoods so that the neighborhoods don't become, by virtue of people who rent houses in the neighborhood so that they can throw game day parties in their front yards in the neighborhood, we would really appreciate the help, because we could see that kind of experience, even if it occurs only a limited number of times a year, as basically driving single families out of the neighborhood.
Let me respond to that, and probably the city can do a better job. I know they have people now that work with students. You know, drinking in the spring when we used to have college days was a real big issue. And I know the police department and the city works very hard at that with students and with people around the university. But Ross, Madam Mayor, you can respond probably better than I can. but
Yeah,
the city
I was
works
just
on it.
going to add it to the list of game day things, if in fact it's something that the city folks feel as if they could possibly work on.
Well,
Wait, no, go
well, I was going to suggest that maybe the thing to do would be to have a recommendation that the city and CSU develop a joint plan to retain single-family dwelling in those nearby neighborhoods, including the impact of game day parties.
I have a suggestion that I would hope would get into the recommendations and that, you know, would be receptive from the rest of the group, and I'm thinking this is a good time to look at that. You know, if you looked at the report that came out of the University of Minnesota and what they did with the neighborhood livability and all the questions that you have, forming that community alliance, and they formed various committees that went out into the neighborhood, a standing committee that they discussed neighborhood livability issues as it relates to the university, and it was all the elements that went with it. They called it a SAG, if you saw that, the Stadium Area Advisory Group and a University District Alliance to address the ramifications of the on-campus stadium and assist neighborhoods to be vibrant, safe, healthy, and sustainable. And it's ongoing. It went through after it's been built, and now they're addressing the issues that go along with it. And I highly recommend that as a piece that becomes part of this stadium as it's built and after it's built, because all the things you talk about are on the table, and it's not only the university, it's the neighborhoods and all those people that would have information that's directed to that. So patterning something after that stadium, the Alliance, to address those issues, and it also supports, it's an opportunity for the university to support what it's doing. But they are more than willing to give that information to us, share the patterns. It's worked well, and in fact, what they actually came up with is there is a 1.5 million endowment that has gone to neighborhood improvements that are directly related to it. And it just keeps building on it and how to fix those improvements. And I would suggest that as a very strong recommendation because of the conflicts that do come with those neighborhoods, the issues that you've addressed, whether it's parking, drinking, noise, whatever. I think there are reasonable ways to resolve those issues, and this is one way. So I'd make that as a suggestion, and I would hope the committee would find that valuable.
Well, and I think there was a lot of those suggestions in everybody's recommendations, which was great. And I think another benefit that CSU has is they have a couple members in their athletic department that actually worked for that athletic department while they were building that on-campus stadium.
did
So,
they? Okay.
so they should be pretty familiar with how that works, so.
But I think that's a wonderful suggestion, and
So I've put one was to develop the neighborhood ambassador program for during events, right? So, and I'll work on wording. Second would be appoint a standing stadium area advisory group to address ongoing neighborhood issues that meets periodically to review and update policies. Does that catch it enough? I mean, in general.
Well, yeah, like in Minnesota, because one of the things that Minnesota came with was they were empowered to spend financial resources on solutions. Some amount.
If I can just, if I can just make a few recommendations about the parking for event day, mainly not Saturday. If you need to be conscientious of the hours of the Student Supported Services Office, Registrar's Office, Student Financial Services, those if they're open till 5 and an event starts at 5, I think there could be a lot of conflicts, so you need to be conscientious of those hours. Also, since there's going to be classroom space within the stadium, classroom scheduling to make sure that events aren't scheduled if there's night classes in there, or that classroom scheduling group is given enough notice to be able to move those classes to other buildings or other areas on campus. And the last thing I have is to know like which departments on campus have 24-hour employees that work, like CSU PD, and maybe block their lots so that they at least have parking available to them on those kind of game days. Thank you.
I think that kind of goes to what Tyler even was saying is, so I've added to accommodate classroom and or support staff and activities.
Are we still on event day?
Game day, sure.
Yeah. I have no doubt that they will be doing this. I just wanted to get it as a recommendation to second it, and that is that we need to develop a unique security plan to secure the dormitories on game days, to secure the neighborhoods from the kind of drinking that's going on, and particularly to police the fans who are there, to keep them from getting too crazy.
Roger, I don't know
I don't
whether,
have, I'll just put something about alcohol enforcement in.
Well, no, I think
It's really what it is.
No, I'm talking about people wandering into the dormitories. Dormitories are 300 feet away. The doors are open. Every dorm has 18 doors that have to be secured. There's about 15 dorms right there.
They're secured all the time anyway.
No, they're not. One person goes in there and it's not secure anymore.
Well, if they hold the door open.
Well, they're,
No.
I mean, they're supposed
At
to
USC,
be.
the dorms have a security guard on every door of every dorm at a USC game. Every door of every dorm at a USC game. It's a bad neighborhood,
Well, not just dorms.
but it's
you-
worse on game day.
Even other buildings on campus, you know, because, you know, who's to say that, you know, that somebody gets drunk and, oh, let's go to student services and find the ghosts, right? You know, I mean, you know, you just don't know. So just, and I know that there's, facilities does go around and lock those doors at a certain point every night. So, but, you know, we might need to ensure that happens, right, to make sure that they're secure.
So maybe the idea is just to have heightened security. The group recommends heightened security during game day events, you know, and I think it runs the gamut between alcohol and, you know,
Sure.
theft and other things.
Sure.
I mean, those are all far more prevalent when you have events. I know we heard it with New West Fest, we heard it with Beer Fest, we hear it with everything. So the recommendation should say something that the expectation of heightened security would maybe cover that.
Roger, this may come in a different spot rather than event day stuff, but at some point, I think we'd like to talk about hours.
and we may wait till we talk about noise, but I just want to, we can take it whenever you want.
Well, I was going to go into noise, because noise is a stickier one, right? So what do we recommend? One is, that I think is interesting, is there a way to recommend that the PA system is used, sparingly or at a lower decibel volume, between plays, before the game, after the game, is one way to try to lessen the impact on that. I think the other is the whole concert concept, and what's the, if we're going to recommend whether concerts should occur or not.
I really think that this has a lot to do with kind of the mayor's point about having that kind of group of ambassadors and that sort, because we don't really know what we don't know yet, right? We kind of have the assumption of what it's going to sound like, but, there's a lot of variables still about, it could be a lot less than any of us could even imagine, right? Or it could be higher. We hadn't really talked too much about the canon yet, but I think that we can kind of make a general opinion, a general recommendation, but I really think that it might be kind of those ambassadors, and that's, when we kind of made our recommendations, we kind of focused on the structure itself and how that might help mitigate the sound a little bit, and then, I don't know, go from there.
One thought also I want to mention is, I think that came, if you haven't had a chance to read Mark's input. I think his number 3 was a good one that says, the university should commit to purchasing and implementing the latest technology in sound and lighting, which the design team has included. But I think the committee should say, if we all know value engineering occurs on projects as we get further down the line, and maybe this is a place where we say this is hands-off for value engineering, that we need the team and the university to commit to using the latest technology that will mitigate and minimize both light and sound leakage, and that this would not be an area that would be acceptable for any value engineering later. Alan, you're poised.
Well, I actually occasionally think before I speak, so that's what I was doing right then. It seems to me that ideally, and by the way, I would like to say that I appreciated the thoughtfulness by which the group that worked on the Be Bold comments were sympathetic to the neighborhood concerns about noise and brainstormed about that. So even though on some issues, which I won't talk about now because I'm trying to be totally positive, we would not be in the same place, I thought that those were very thoughtful and creative. What I'm wondering is if there isn't some way to basically say the goal ought to be to meet the existing city standards, which I think are 55 decibels during the day till 8 at night, 50 after 8 at the property line of residential neighborhoods, and we might define those as starting in the grid around it at Shields and Prospect and College and Laurel. The goal ought to be to meet that. Understanding that even after the most creative efforts to meet it, including looking at the scoreboard again and whether or not you can wrap it a little bit more, you can't get there. Then the next layer down ought to be, we'll live with it for CSU football games because they need a stadium. But we don't want to live with it for any other events. And so I don't know whether there is a tiered way to go there, but, if it turns out to be impossible to meet the existing CSU standards, the existing city standards around that square, I think there are a lot of people that can understand that CSU needs a place to play football. And if it turns out that they decide to play football on campus, then maybe we got to live with that. I mean, I would like some of the mitigating things as somebody who came back with almost no eardrums left from watching the Broncos game, it's getting to the point now where you have to wear earplugs inside the stadium because of the level of the noise they pump at you, and they won't leave a single dead moment of sound. So even in a CSU football game, I hope some mitigating things so we don't have to listen to ads in my backyard. But if we could tier it, but establish a standard rather than trying to do what a non-expert really can't do, which is say, does this really clever idea about wrapping the scoreboard actually do something? But create the standard, ask people to try their level best to meet it, and then if you can't meet it, say, okay, we'll live with that for the football games by CSU because CSU needs it, but after that, that's enough to impose on the neighborhood. Now, and then, of course, if you can make a concert work, okay. If you can't make a concert work, then no concerts.
I agree. I mean, and I think that that's the advantage of having the kind of the ambassadors is, so you have a concert that's got 25,000 people and it, Alan's saying, hey, this is just way too loud for us. I mean, it's coming through my frickin' windows and, then we say, well, how about a concert of 15,000? Because we know that with this technology, we can turn the sound down, right? And then it's acceptable. I think that is a huge advantage to having, to Mark's point of this type of sound system, so.
Yeah, the likelihood of meeting the Fort Collins noise ordinances for a football game is slim, but your point's well taken again. And in the design currently, we have the distributed sound system, unlike the Broncos Stadium that has the cluster. The closer you sit to that thing, the louder it is. So again, we'll have the ability to mitigate sound for concerts and stuff. And usually, again, concerts will typically bring in their own sound system. They won't use the PA. So,
right. But once again, if we were to put in what the goal is and where we can live with not meeting it and where we can't live with it, I would suggest that for your consideration.
So how do folks feel about that? I think it's a reasonable. There was another suggestion that came in about once the stadium is built, do periodic noise analysis to look at how the early projections from the noise study actually is playing out. So I think we could package this, that's the university, we recommend the university regularly monitor sound levels during the first year. We look for ways in the design to try to mitigate and meet the ordinance, but if you can on football games, you must on everything else.
For CSU football games, I don't want to sponsor everything in the front range.
Okay. Other items on noise, game day parking.
Back to the game day piece. Junior Ram Club is a pretty integral part of Ram Club, so trying to keep the Ram Town kind of theme as close to the stadium as possible. I'm not sure is there a great green area or some sort of green lawn that you're planning?
Inside the stadium, again, there's a great green plaza. That's after you take your tickets into the stadium, and it'll be a ticketed area. So no, not from a site design standpoint outside of the secure line of the stadium. There's nothing planned currently for an area like what you're describing.
Okay. So that would be a recommendation that we would have from Ram Club because, trying to make it a kind of a family event. Specifically, if you've been to an Air Force game, they have areas inside that are kid-friendly, like you had mentioned. And then parking is a very integral piece to Ram Club because that's how we use to differentiate some of our benefit levels. And I think that goes towards speaking to some of the confusion about people finding parking. Similar to Hughes, you're assigned a gold lot, blue lot, orange lot. So as people are assigned those via their Ram Club levels, I think they'll be able to find and access that pretty well. So it's important that we have parking relatively close to the stadium because, again, the purpose of Ram Club is to fully fund all 16 athletic varsity sports. And the more benefits we can increase, the more money raised through Ram Club. So it's important that we have those, areas near the university or near the stadium.
So if I could jump in on because I think probably everyone agrees that Ram Club serves a really important function. And we all want to raise as much money as we can for programs, certainly, especially the programs that don't raise this is a way to help fund programs that aren't the top tier. But I think if we kind of keep our recommendations that are high level, like, for example, parking on campus has to be restricted to pass holders, that would then accommodate the needs of the Rams Club, because the Rams Club would be season ticket holders or they would be pass holders. And so I think we can accomplish some of what you're wanting to see without being specific to Ram Club, but saying, you know, we're not going to allow cash parking on campus. It's going to be only by permit and assigned. And then the university can figure out where is Ram Club assigned versus where is VIPs or CDAC members. Where do you guys get picked, you know, parking, et cetera, if that's okay.
And handicapped.
And handicap will obviously, yeah.
If I may, as far as the parking, I'd like to put an exclamation mark on the end of that. As much as we can, especially those smaller lots, we really want to minimize the amount of travel we have between lots. I go to that 15-party lot, it's full. I go to another lot, that's where we have problems. So as many of those small lots can be pre-designated, and for those that are designated, there's actually parking that exists within that. And then those larger lots to the South Campus area, if those could be the ones that people know, this is my destination and I will have parking, I think that's going to minimize some of the traffic disruption.
I think I'll word it. You know, Boulder, that's the way. Boulder has some lots that they'll have 10 spots, but you know it's lot 14, and it may have 10 spots, but you're assigned that parking lot. And
Yeah, basically, before you leave your house that day, you know which lot you'll be parking in.
And so, lot 16 may have 18 spots, but they have only given those those passes and their hang tags that you get for the season. So I think the university has to do it that specific, or you can never get around the driving around. Ann?
So could we also say that for tailgating? That the university should designate lots that will accommodate tailgating, and they can figure out, you know, how they want to do that.
Everyone think that's reasonable? And I think also RV lots, right? There's going to be an RV lot, and it'll only accommodate X number of vehicles. They'll be by permit, et cetera.
Yeah, I think you have to distinguish between RV lots and just regular car lots, because if you go to the CSU games now, they tailgate in all the parking lots. You know, so you just pull up your car and they have a tailgate in the back of it. That's a tailgate. So if you're looking at RVs, I agree with you. I think that makes a lot of sense. But I think currently what they do, and I would assume they do otherwise, is as long as you have a lot and there's enough room back there, you and your friends can get together for a tailgate. So I think we probably need to distinguish what that is.
I guess that you need to say that. I mean, you need to say that CSU can say that any lot can be used for tailgating, or say that only designated lots can be used for tailgating. That you need to clarify that up front.
So do you all, I mean, is there concern about, you know, if Bob pulls up with his girlfriend and they pull out 2 lawn chairs and grill burgers, and that's tailgating by definition, but that's different than an like an RV or a fraternity organizing a tailgater or Be Bold or anybody. So,
or Crested Butte.
Or yeah, Crested Butte. You know, I think I'm hearing the biggest concern is really these organized tailgates where there's lots of people, more than just season ticket holders that are going to sit and have a a burger. Is that correct?
Well, I've heard a concern, and it was in one of the documents that we got about even unorganized tailgating, making sure that it happens safely, that emergency access is not restricted, so that kind of leans towards all tailgating should only be in designated areas, whether it's an organized party or an impromptu one.
That's not unusual elsewhere, by the way.
How do people feel?
Tailgating is limited
Reasonable?
to certain areas. The problem is supervision. If you're going to have tailgating in 4 lots, what is that gentleman over there going to do?
Okay.
Tailgating at Hughes is easy to supervise because it's right there in front of you. And the police officers I've talked to said, yep, it's pretty easy to supervise, right? We can see who's causing trouble and who's not. But if you spread them out into 40 different places, now you're going to have 40 of him in those 40 different places if you want to supervise that, the security of that tailgating, which is why probably you ought to limit it to bigger lots, put them in big lots, small lots for something else, like the faculty or whatever.
So, Roger, with
Yes.
everything that's been suggested, this might be intuitive in the thought, but I would really like a suggestion that says a huge educational process is done, a marketing program, a website design or whatever about parking, because, for example, went up to the University of Wyoming and all they have are designated lots. So if you're a visitor to go to the football game, there's no space for you to park, so all you do is drive around. So it would have been nice to be able to go up there and say, okay, visitor parking is in this lot. So I would just love to see, all right, whatever is decided, no small lots used, these places for tailgates, an immense education process is used to get everybody on the same page.
Okay, that's good.
Roger?
Yes?
One of my concerns is I just haven't heard enough about faculty and staff parking. And yes, there's not classes for the most part on Saturday, but the library has extended hours. And there are labs and other facilities on campus that do require people to be there. They have to drive. Some of us take public transportation, some do not. And that's really got to be clear that the activities of the university on Saturdays cannot be waylaid just because of a game. I used to work at Texas A&M, and I refused to go into work on Saturday because I had to park 2 miles off campus with their on-campus stadium.
I'll word that. I mean, I've got it in there that we need to accommodate classroom and staff activities. And I think that's true on Saturday. It's also a bigger issue on Thursdays if night games come back and how those can be accommodated. The other thing I thought about is when based on the mayor talking about Minnesota, I think we can recommend a campus advisory group, right, that has faculty and staff that really talks about those kinds of issues directly on an ongoing basis, and they meet before the season, they meet halfway through the season and make modifications if something isn't working, and they meet at the end to do a debrief and say, okay, for next year, what can we do differently? Okay. Let's see. Just looking at Mark's. Anything else in Mark's?
Could I get a clarification on where we ended up with the discussion on tailgating? And if there is a recommendation, do we have something there that addresses?
I put that we would allow tailgating and RV parking in designated lots
Designated.
only.
Okay.
And I think incumbent on that is you have, any lot that we have, you're going to have to maintain traffic flow, emergency access, et cetera.
Okay.
There wasn't a lot of input on lighting. I mean, I think everyone felt the lighting. I mean, there was some kind of, a few comments, but there wasn't a big focus on lighting. What thoughts do people have about lighting?
Personally, I thought lighting was the example of one area where technology had solved the problem with period,
Pretty
full
closely.
stop.
So then the other, I think, then is, design. Are there design features? Understanding that design is quite a ways along, and there's budget considerations. I think we addressed one of not allowing them to, or recommending that you cannot value engineer any of the critical lighting or noise elements, the sound system. The scoreboard, the ram's head facing the Shealy has been talked about. Additional use of glass and stone. I think Tyler and others brought up possibly changing the configuration of that scoreboard to provide more sound protection. Tyler?
Yeah, that's, that was kind of one of our recommendations. If you go to Mile High, they have a very long scoreboard, but it's only 40 feet tall. Now, obviously, it's sitting on top of some stands, right? And I don't know what the height of this scoreboard was, but if I recall, you said it was 90 feet wide. So I didn't know if there was a possibility to make it shorter and longer, which would kind of help block some of the sound, maybe, even block some of the light. There was Carl in his discussion had mentioned putting the scoreboard on the opposite side. My worry with that is then you kind of have the opposite effect. Then you kind of have, then you really have a billboard for Allen to look at. So I don't know if, Algin, if you have any thoughts or ideas on that.
Yeah, so the scoreboard right now is at an aspect ratio that's HD. But sure, you see scoreboards. Soldier Field is another one that don't really meet an aspect ratio. That's more squattier and longer. So yeah, I mean, there's certainly an opportunity to look at the configuration of the scoreboard if that becomes a recommendation.
I would support that type of recommendation. I think it's very sensitive to what the neighbors are talking about. I think it's a wise outcome from this group.
Well, and I think that as useful as that is, if people could bring themselves to do it, I really think having an architectural feature rather than a billboard-like feature on the south side, particularly given its visibility, I think that if one did something that was really aesthetically interesting, that it could turn into a positive landmark rather than something which was a chronic irritant.
So just, when you say an architectural feature, I know that you guys don't want the big Ram logo, and I'm assuming you don't want it in green and white. But if it was in rock or other native product, would that still be as offensive?
Well, it would be less offensive. I still don't want to look at a billboard, and I would think of anything that really is designed to be like a logo or an advertisement would be not really something that I want to have to live with on a temporary, complete basis. But you're absolutely correct that the rock is more interesting than the other. But I also think you look down 50 years, logos change, tastes change. If we're really building something for half a century, I would go with something that's more timeless.
And then just the other recommendation on the lighting thing was, I can only assume there's probably ribbon boards on here. That's kind of how new stadiums are designed. And just the recommendation was to bring those ribbon boards down to, just below the right above the field level, I guess, right below the people in the stands right there. That way it's at the field level. That way, you can't see it from neighborhoods, and, it kind of reduces some of the light glare and that sort of thing. But I think it would still have the same effect of that ribbon board, just at a lower level. So. And that might be something, though, that you might need to, ask Jim McElwain about, because if that has an effect on the players, I couldn't tell you that might have an effect on how the game's played, too. So it just might be something to consider.
I like the idea that the scoreboard is lower. I would also like that the whole stadium be lower. And that is not to say dig it into the ground, chop off a few layers, put those seats in the end zone, call it good. If you look ahead, the assumption is that millennials are simply not going to go to football games the way us old folks did. And people are actually planning for smaller, not larger stadiums. So we may have one about the right size, but it doesn't have to be that high.
So trying to think about how we would accommodate a recommendation like that. I mean, I think we know where the university's desire is on a side, that what they feel is the right number of seats. Could we couch something like that in, should the university decide to lower, to reduce the number of seats, that they would take those seats from the top and reduce the size? But I mean, I think the university has been pretty clear on the specs that they've given the design team. So I'm just trying to figure out how we could have a recommendation that kind of memorializes, if those specs change, here's how we would like the design to change to accommodate it.
I didn't hear him saying reduce the number of seats. I just heard him say reconfigure the existing number of seats in a way that reduces the vertical extent of the building.
Well,
And oddly enough, I have read or heard Dr. Frank at least 6-7 times in the last month or so talking about a downsized stadium. I'm not sure what he means by a downsized stadium. I don't think he means taking out seats. I think he may be, in fact, sensitive to the issue that the community has said, this thing's too dang tall.
Algin, I guess you can probably answer this question better for all of us, because we're always talking about that west side structure, right? Mm-hmm. Which I mean, if you remove some seats, you can't lower that structure because it's what's in that structure that's making it bigger, right? You know,
So there's a million different kind of bowl configurations. To answer your question, you could lower it and push it closer to the field. For example, in the image that you see on the screen, if you were to fill in the south side with seats and you took that capacity down from the west side, you could push it down and closer to the field. The issue is that you start minimizing your flexibility for the future, for any kind of future build out. But yeah, you certainly could. There's a ton of bowl.
I'm curious
configurations
about
you
that, about minimizing for the future. My assumption was that if you build a lower bowl that's completely circular or completely oval, filled in, that you still have the opportunity to raise the sides once you're running a program that regularly fills that bowl. I mean, I've seen it happen at Memorial Stadium in Lincoln over and over and over again. I mean, it's like, how
Right.
tall is this thing gonna be?
Right.
You know, I think it's as tall as the state capitol there now. But it wasn't that way when I was there. It was just a plain little old bowl and just kept going up and up and up on the sides.
That's actually a really good design challenge in Memorial Stadium in Lincoln, Nebraska. So if we were to do something like what I talked about and build a full configured bowl, like they had the problem again, you can do anything if you have the money. You start tacking on and it becomes higher and higher and higher because you don't have any open space like that to fill in for the next renovation in the future.
So it's cheaper later.
It's more expensive later. If you, for example, it would be more
No, but I
expensive
mean,
to.
this design is cheaper later to fill in.
Correct. But again, there's, if that becomes one of the recommendations, we certainly can look at bowl configurations and what that does to the height of the building on the east and west sides.
You know, and it seems to me that we are able to make that kind of recommendation to say that it's preferred it's not as tall as 175 feet or, you know, I don't know if it's more specific than that, but it seems to me we're allowed to say that as far as a recommendation that the impacts of the height is not tolerable to the majority of people, or, yeah. I mean, and they're the ones that are.
Does everyone feel comfortable
But-
with a recommendation that says if there are further design revision possibilities, that we'd like to see the height of the stadium scaled back and the seats configured
I
in a
mean, that's
different
what we
way?
have a problem with is height. It is
It's
an
not
issue.
necessarily, it's not the 40,000 seats, it's the
Right.
height.
Amen.
It seems to me like we should make a recommendation then about what is an acceptable height. You know, if they reduce it by 5 feet, is that really making a difference? And so to have a more well-rounded recommendation, I think we could say, the recommendation is to reduce the height, and here's maybe a range that's potentially more acceptable. Just a thought for consideration.
Could you remind us what the west side height is?
117. I'm gonna
Can
pull
we-
it up right now.
Can we
so I
pull
don't
up that,
mistake.
because we put some heights on different markers the last time.
Pretty sure it's 117 in the center, and again, that grade, because again, that's an average, because that grade slopes from south high to north low.
I think it would be difficult to do that, given that, first of all, I don't have any kind of sense of engineering and how that happens. I think the message is that we're sending to Dr. Frank, and he has the ability to change that. Or if he knows that we find this as issue, he can consider it and talk to Elgin and say, hey, try this. I mean, I think anything shows a sense of community understanding and understanding that the impact to the neighborhood, the height is one of them that's not really acceptable and has been at issue.
But Karen, that's tough, it's tough to just say lower the height, I agree. So 120 feet, 12 stories. The towers are what, 10, 130, so they're even taller. So what part of that's offensive? I wasn't here for the view issue on the 3D scale that we were talking about. So from where Alan lives, how much of that will you see from your house? Or Carl, how much do you see from your house? Is it 90 feet we need to be at? Is that what's gonna make it better for you? So that's, because that's what I think you owe them. So when Algin goes to try and redesign, he can say, okay, my goal is to try and get 9 stories high instead of 12 stories.
Well, I think this committee could say, if it wants, as low as possible or while maintaining the desired number of seats.
I agree.
I think we need to definitely be sensitive to the fact that I don't think Alger can just go back and redesign it for really cheap, right? You know, so I think we need to be able to say, okay, we're okay with it, right? It's not ideal. We'd rather have this thing be a foot tall if it could be, but it can't be, right? So you know, I mean, it's a beautiful design. It looks great. It's not as tall as the tallest buildings on campus. Could it be a little shorter? I don't know. You know, Algin can look at that again.
So just to come back and respond to your comment, it was 117.6, so 117 feet 6 inches at its highest point on the west side.
Roger, you had some language you started to.
Well, I was just saying, I think I haven't written this one, but I think that you could say if designs continue to evolve, right, the committee would like to see the overall height of the stadium as low as possible while accommodating the desired, the scale, the number of seats the university feels is necessary. We don't know, as people have mentioned, and as we don't know what Dr. Frank's going to report to the board. There may be some opportunities, there may not, but at least it's on record that we're not objecting to the size. We're just saying if there's a way to move seats around so that it lowers the profile, that would be desirable.
I like it.
Okay. Okay.
And then
Other
just-
design.
Well, just back to lighting, the other suggestion that came across for lighting was whether or not we could, in a previous meeting, we had kind of made this recommendation, extend that, kind of the top of that stadium, or that west structure there, out further as kind of both weather blockage for high-end donors that are there, but also that might just, I don't know if that allows us to direct the lighting downward more, if that's out further, so that there'd be less light seepage. I know lighting, you know, we've kind of discussed isn't a huge deal, but there was just something that was brought up as kind of a possible 2-for-1 that, you know, maybe it wouldn't cost much to do. And obviously we have some weather issues with hues, and this might be something that might, you know, be desirable to that effect, and it might even help reverberate sound down into the stadium, so that we could turn that PA system down and a few other things.
So just a couple of comments, yeah. So the extending the roof structure towards the field of the press box, it would help with sound more than it would help with light, because the lights are pointing down. And that high structurally, if you go, it's not a, when you start talking about cost, it's not a factor of every 10 feet is incremental cost. 10 feet, you could say, is X. 20 feet is X times 4 because of the cantilever structure. So the further you try to throw that out, you try to cantilever that out, the more expensive it becomes. But yes, it's certainly a possibility.
Okay. Other design elements.
You know, this is maybe late in the game. When we were talking about the parking, and I don't know if this kind of can fit with what we're talking about. Where did we end up? There was the suggestion about building the parking lot, building one of the parking lots at the same time. Did we include that, or did we drop that off? At the same time, the stadium, and this is the one that was near the engineering building?
There wasn't consensus.
Okay, hearing that, could I make a suggestion that, because we are recommending to Dr. Frank that he consider building one of the parking structures, or fitting it into, because it is part of the plan, that it could be fit into the planning that coincides with the stadium on building a parking structure. I think it alleviates a lot of the issues of not enough parking, and it gives another direction. And I throw that out to the committee about suggesting.
Alan?
Yeah, in addition to the earlier reservation I had about potentially short-circuiting on-campus discussions about the trade-offs between different types of parking structures and their locations, I guess I'm not convinced that additional parking on campus is necessarily what we want to suggest right now. While, if I heard properly, I believe I heard some people indicate that if we were to build more parking structures on campus, we would eliminate the need to rely upon the Natural Resources Research Center and maybe the area down by the tennis courts. But it's not clear to me that those areas properly serviced by shuttle buses won't get people in and out of that campus and the stadium more easily than bringing them all the way down behind the engineering building. So I really think that we ought not to predetermine where's the best place to put additional parking for both of those reasons.
That wasn't the point of building the parking. You know, it coincides with the direction of the university in building their parking. That's on their master plan. By coinciding and directing it at the same time, you're not only meeting CSU's goal of parking on campus, but you're also meeting the goal that can fit in with the stadium. So it's a dual purpose, and that's one of the things that Dr. Frank mentioned here this evening. You know, if we can look at it, what works for the university as well as what works financially, if, you know, it's a recommendation to saying, hey, maybe now's the opportune time to do this. And that's what I throw out to the committee, because it helps not only with the stadium, but it helps with the university goals and directions and parking for all other things. And that's the idea.
Could I suggest if we include it, maybe we tie it to the concept of protecting needed faculty and campus activity parking. So we go back with the recommendation that if the university, that we believe it's of primary importance that they protect faculty and staff and student activities that require on-campus parking before assigning parking for game day operations. And if there's not sufficient parking to do that, that they need to build that parking for that purpose, maybe not as much tie it to the game.
Yeah. I'd like to see a parking garage, but I'd like to see it down at Bay Farm. I think spreading out where people are going to have to go makes more sense than trying to put them right by the stadium. But I agree with the mayor that, you know, they can probably kill two birds with one stone by doing something like that. But secondarily, parking garages don't give you many parking places. And the price for a parking place in a parking garage is about 20 grand per spot compared to a regular parking place of 5,000. So it's a real expensive way to get 400 parking spaces or 500 parking spaces. But, I mean, if they could use it both ways, sure, I think that would make sense.
It's on their parking plan.
Yeah, I think that's they need it for their long-term parking plan. I can just, I mean, if you look down at like the Rockies have now built a parking garage, but one of the biggest discussions was you can't get cars out of a parking garage as fast as you can get them out of surface lots. So you don't see lots of parking garages around stadiums because the exit times are problematic.
I think our recommendation needs to be very similar to the height, in that we think this is something that we would encourage them to do, right? But, you know, it's kind of out of our hands, you know, what it is and where it is. I agree with Carl. I think it should be the Bay Farms, but it sounds like it might be engineering, and who knows tomorrow. But I think it's a very similar sort of recommendation.
Yeah, kind of something along the lines that the committee recognizes that parking solutions are beneficial both for event day parking as well as the ongoing impacts of the school on the city. So.
Okay.
It certainly would make up for the 1,500 to 2,000 or whatever it was parking spots that we're gonna lose based off that. So I don't know about the best location. They'd have to figure that part out, but I think they need to build a parking structure.
Okay. Another thing I thought of that I would like to suggest adding is where we said focus, non-assigned parking on off-campus sites that either have shuttle service or are adjacent to travel. I think we ought to add looking for opportunities to partner with existing property owners with parking, whether it's downtown parking garage or it's Kmart or it's the new Foothills. That we include that so that it's we want to encourage that kind of partnerships. Okay, other items.
The only thing, and I didn't have it in here, having a 2-year-old, I know very, very much when I go to a Rockies game how nice it is to have a place for my kid to go play. And having that incorporated into this stadium, I think would make it very community friendly. Obviously the importance is to have as many people come to the stadium as possible. So including a playground that is, Ram designed and that kind of thing. I know a lot of alumni would love to be able to do that. So put that in there.
Another issue on the family orientation of a stadium, given that they're doubtless going to put alcohol in the stadium because they need the money, pretty sure they need the money, and they need the fans. They need to have an area, which some schools have, which is free of alcohol for families to seat themselves in. And saves a lot of problem with you and the kids sitting next to people who are plastered, That's not good for the kids.
So I'm not disagreeing with that, but is that a design item that really goes in?
Yeah, I would give them if they're going to have kids there, give them a special room, okay, paint it in clown colors and all of that, yeah. Okay, no.
That could be something that the one of the two ongoing committees that we encourage could address, is how do you deal with, that's like a behavior issue along with tailgating, et cetera. Yes.
I'm not actually sure where this fits, perhaps under design features, but a lot of the people that I represent on campus work with students on a hourly basis, and we have a lot of really wonderful programs that students get degrees into, and if we can incorporate those programs into the different design elements of the stadium, I'd like to advocate for that, whether it's music students and acoustics, nutrition students, and working on, what was that?
Horticulture.
Yeah, horticulture and landscaping, construction management and the building of the stadium, occupational therapy and handicap disability kind of things. Just wanted to put that out there as a way to use the stadium as a learning environment for students.
I'm glad you said that, because that was what I was thinking about with the design element. When we were talking, we didn't spend a lot of time talking about the classrooms and the educational aspect, but I think what you're saying is highlighting that aspect and making it a focal point of the stadium being more than just the stadium. And I know that was built in the design, but how we do that in the design feature, showcasing the elements. I don't know what's going to happen with the classroom, but I think it's exactly as you said. It showcases the strengths of the university, whether it's the vet school, whether it's atmospheric sciences, the research side, definitely connecting to Powerhouse Energy Institute. So, getting that design, that was putting it into the design feature of.
Yeah.
That
I think those are
recommend.
great aspirational. I just don't know that they're something that we can recommend as a design. And I wonder if there's two different, are you looking for engineering students to have an opportunity to help design the stadium?
Yeah,
And
I
think
see a little bit more of a applied education in the space as it's being built, as it's being utilized, things like
And
that.
I think we actually talked a little bit about that, and it was just kind of determined it's not feasible because of the student schedule versus the way this is done, and it doesn't line up, with courses. Maybe the construction folks, there'd be some internships.
Yeah, something like that. Or
I believe that was written into the contract for the student center. Saunders did that.
On the
and,
GC?
Yep. it was required that they hire CM student interns. And I think CSU Facilities also hires CM interns on that side of the house as well. So just a
Okay.
thought.
Okay, other design items?
You got anything else on your list that we haven't gotten to?
I don't think so.
Let me go to one thing that I suspect may be ultimately not resolvable, and that we may just have to live with underneath the earlier language on noise for CSU football games versus everything else. There is when you look at the computer models of how far the sound extends, okay, my recollection is that it was 50 decibels south of Drake, 55 partway through the Center for Advanced Technology, and then if you looked east, went almost all the way to, is it LeMay? And almost all the way up to Mountain on some of those. If we start a game at 9 o'clock on a Thursday night and can't find a way to mitigate sound, what does that do to a whole bunch of a huge residential core of the city? So that's by way of introduction to the question of one of the items that I put down, which, as I said, once we deal with the issue and say we're just going to restrict these things and just live with a certain number of CSU football games, but if you drop this stadium into the middle of the city and you start a game at 9 on a Thursday evening, that's not going to be a whole lot of fun for a whole lot of people. And so I don't know whether or not there's any way to deal with expectations about hours. I'm even willing to compromise to talk about things that go late because of overtime, but it seems to me that starting out to have events that are going to go to 11 or 11:30 or midnight on a work night is likely to be pretty controversial.
Can I respond and probably ask Mark? Because he has more experience with that. Obviously, the CSU last game was a little bit later, wasn't here, of course. What's your sense from your background with the athletic department? How often would that happen or could happen? I know it could happen, but and is it TV that controls all that?
TV controls it, but I think it's not unrealistic to say we're not going to start a game after 8 o'clock. And I don't know that, I don't recall, my memory's, Kelly's here, he's been around here as long as I have. I don't think we ever started the game. We might have started one at 8:15 once. It seemed like we played Louisville one year. It was like it was, yeah, on a Thursday night. I'm thinking Thursday night games. I don't think we ever started one after 8. And I'm not sure. I mean, the TV networks will ask for anything. You know, they're pretty demanding. But I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility to say, we're just going to make a recommendation to the university. Don't start a football game after 8 o'clock. I think that's really reasonable.
Thank you.
Why don't you call this section parameters?
I'll order this around, but I'll is that all right with everyone? Okay.
Well, you may want to change it to event.
I will. I'm going to use event on all of these.
Roger, going back to the mayor's comment earlier, is this facility a palace for football or is it a CSU facility? And if it's a CSU facility, it's an opportunity to celebrate all the different aspects of the university. So when you think of those common hallway areas and so on, that pedestrian areas, there could be some design elements or display areas or whatever that highlight. And she mentioned specific programs, but it is a first-rate research university. And so you've got an opportunity to really tell that story. Just as you do right now in Moby Arena, you walk through and you see the display cases and celebrate athletics. That's part of this stadium too, to celebrate what the football team is doing and the history of the football team. But it could be more than that. So I want to reinforce the comment. This is really an opportunity for this facility, for the university to showcase itself in a broader sense beyond athletics.
Okay. I'll put something in. I get
That
it.
was
Yeah, I don't know whether the rest of the group agrees
Okay.
with that or not, but I just think it's, especially because it's an on-campus stadium, for some reason in my mind, because a lot of these programs that could be celebrated or highlighted in that facility, those buildings are right outside the door. And there's an opportunity, for people being on the campus to really kind of be immersed in all of that college experience, not just the football side of it.
So a suggestion then would be I could try to put this together in and put some language around each of these ideas. We'll circulate it and I think it's, at this point, we're not adding major concepts, but if there's a wordsmith or I misspell something or have forgotten something, we'll get some input and try to do this via email and get it to a point where we feel comfortable to submit it to Tony. Is that ever okay with everyone?
So what's the deadline?
Well, the Board of Governors meet the 1st and 2nd of October. Is that correct? So I think Dr. Frank would like this probably 10 days before, a week or week to 10 days before.
So just one suggestion. I like the idea of taking what you put together and circulating it by email and getting feedback and kind of a consensus around that. A fallback to that, and hopefully that's it. You put a period behind it and we reach agreement on what you've come up with. A fallback could be that we could if we don't have agreement on everything, that we could have a phone meeting to finish it up rather than trying to get the group back together. Hopefully we don't come to that. Hopefully we get it done via email, but.
I think that's very reasonable. We can sure, we've dialed in every month. No one's ever called in, but we can sure use that number and have a conference call.
I guess I would just like to ask at this point in time, the things that we've discussed, is there anyone here who has major heartburn with what we've done? I thought the ideas we gave you had pretty much a consensus,
I do
which,
too.
that's what I heard at the table.
Yeah, I would think that's correct. The only question I will wait and see, and I think all of us will, is whether or not something that we thought we all nodded to is in the notes or not.
Yeah.
And that's just part of, you've done so well
Roger's
so far, I'm
competency.
reasonably confident.
Well, I get to watch this a second time too, which is fun.
Roger, do we need to address any other things that we would like to suggest that they do or don't have? Or we just leave that for some other installation?
Well, I mean, so that's the big question. I know there's a lot of you that, we have tried to avoid. We've tried to stay within the mission of, if this is built, the university has said they're going to build it on campus, what can we do to make it as good of a facility as possible? I realize there's other issues that are related to, should it be built, shouldn't it be built, et cetera. And I don't think that's what this here is. We weren't asked to provide, and I don't think we get consensus. So, leave that to the public comment on October 1st at the Board of Governors meeting. Because I think there's 2 hours set aside.
Roger, we did agree, right, to Bob's suggestion that we suggest an ongoing committee to
Yep.
periodically look at these.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm going to put two, one that's a
Yeah.
community and one that's an on-campus.
Yeah, okay, good.
Roger, one last thing, sorry, this just came to my mind. The area just to the east of the stadium that has all the native trees to Colorado in there, I suggest that maybe, kind of like the mayor suggested, if we could use some resources to spruce that up and highlight that up while we're spending money on the new stadium. To be honest with you, I didn't know that existed prior to this discussion, so I think that would be fantastic. I'm not sure what that area is called. You guys know what I'm talking about? Is it? Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, I'm sorry, west. But not Perk, but the area, there's a walkway with, yeah, every single native tree to Colorado is in there. And so I think they could really highlight that as a kind of community gathering as well.
Any other comments? Everybody comfortable with that? Okay.
All right, well, it's been a pleasure coming up to Fort Collins the last few months. Thank you all very much. I've gotten to talk to a lot of you on the telephone and via email between meetings, and that I've enjoyed that. So we'll get this out. Give me to the end of the week, and I'll get this circulated, and we can start working on edits.
Good job facilitating these discussions, you guys.
Thanks for all your work.